Welcome to Conversations with Ben Dixon, where we're looking at very important topics through a biblical and spiritual lens. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, if you want to continue to watch this or listen to this, make sure you go to iTunes. You can look up Conversations with Ben Dixon and subscribe. Or you can always go to YouTube and look for Ignite Global Ministries and hit the subscribe button. We have our playlist called Conversations with Ben Dixon. If you forget all that, just go to conversationswithbendixon.com and you can get all the information that you need right there. We're going to drop a new episode every Monday, and you can follow along in this journey of all these important conversations that we're going to have. Today, I've got a special guest with me, my friend, Pastor Trevor Loya from Terrace Foursquare Church. What's up, Trevor?
Hey, how you doing?
You doing
Glad
good?
to be here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, doing good.
If you're not doing good, we can do this over. Anyways, Trevor's one of my best friends. I've known him for longer than a decade, and he's also got an important voice on some of the subjects that we're going to bring up in this conversation today. And just to let you know, what we're going to do today is we want to start a conversation, not necessarily finish it, because it's sort of like an umbrella topic. You can throw a lot of things underneath it as you talk about it. So I can imagine the branches of this tree are going to grow out from what we say today. So what we're talking about today is what we're saying, we're defining as faith deconstruction. Sometimes you'll hear the term deconstructionism, or somebody will say, I'm deconstructing my faith, or you'll read about a person who's deconstructing their faith. Right. And we're going to define that, and we want to talk about how people arrive at this place. Now, again, as we define it, just remember the word deconstruction or deconstructionism can be used in a myriad of ways. And I hope that ultimately, as we land this, that we help some who are actually questioning things or thinking about God in a new way, or the Bible, or have questions, because ultimately that's what we're here to do. We want to talk about very important topics through a biblical and a spiritual lens. And I know, Trevor, you've taught about this before. I've talked a lot about this, but you hear a lot about it the more and more that, people walk away from the faith and people choose to not follow Jesus anymore.
Right.
As that happens, you hear this word more and more, deconstruction. Right. I'm deconstructing my faith. So Let me ask you, and we'll springboard off of each other, what does it mean to deconstruct your faith, or what is deconstructionism the way that you would define it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things that isn't a new subject. It's just that in the last year has come up so much, and more in the last probably few years, more and more. But this is a philosophy that is 60 years old, and it comes out of postmodernism. But really what I think it is today, how it's morphed and in terms of deconstruction of faith, it is the proactive dismantling of what we believe. Right. It's a proactive approach. It's just not something that we stop tending to something like of our beliefs. We get lukewarm and we stop caring. It is an action of tearing down these pillars of faith that we have believed maybe our entire life. And so there's just rubble left in terms of what we believe. And that's what we're seeing happen. That's what deconstruction is. When we speak about deconstruction, that's what we mean when it comes to that. And so we see that happen all across. I mean, we're seeing it in society all over the place. Deconstruction just take over. We've seen major public figures, Christian figures. The last time I was on here, we talked about kind of these falling of celebrity pastors. We've seen them like Joshua Harris, the guy who does I Kiss Dating Goodbye. We've seen
did
he did. Michael Gungor, the famous musician, who's just completely down that road. Rob Bell, Richard Rohr is really the one who has propagated this entire movement of deconstruction of faith, and there's more. There's just more and more coming up. Lots of worship artists that have come out and said this, and so it's a wild thing. To watch. Entire podcasts are built around how to deconstruct your faith in a positive light. So we're talking about it in a different light today, right?
Yeah, we are. We're taking on a different approach than some of the positive voices that are like, hey, you should do this, right? So we're kind of posing it as not entirely as a negative thing, but that the way that many are going about this is, in fact, negative. So as we're defining it, we're talking about like a systematic tearing down of tradition and traditional beliefs as people sort of begin to question things. And the overwhelming majority of the time people talk about this, it is negative.
Right.
Like it is, Christianity's not real.
Right.
Things that people believe or say is not true. God isn't who people say he is. The Bible, can you really trust it? Christian beliefs, I mean, come on. Look at how Christians are responsible for so much war and damage and chaos and trauma. And so these things must be questioned. Authority must be torn down. Christian leaders are full of it. I mean, on and on, right? Like this is sort of the overwhelming majority of what people are talking about. But in a positive sense, would you say that deconstructing something doesn't have to be negative? Now, it is primarily in most circles, but to actually examine something, to look at a belief, to study and go deeper, to dive deeper into something to better understand it, that's a positive thing.
Right.
When a person has doubts,
Right.
when a person has questions, they should dive deeper.
Right.
This is
100%.
So our position is not to say you shouldn't ask questions. Our position my position would be, when a person arrives at a place of skepticism as a way of life, let's just question everything. Everything needs to be torn down. Everything needs to be questioned. Everything needs to be analyzed. I've found that to be the path to an unbeliever. You're either going to become an agnostic or an atheist at some point, which is absolutely the way that it goes. So this is a big topic. There's a lot going on here, and I'm sure like people are familiar with this, even if you're not familiar with the terminology, right? Like you have to go beyond the terminology. We could use the word skeptic, or being cynical or skeptical to the things of Christian faith and Christian orthodoxy, and all of that.
Well, the funny thing is, the originator of deconstruction would say that to be an adult is to be skeptical. Is to question and to doubt. That's what it means. You know, there's many times where when I say something about, Jesus says, believe like a child, and there's things I've posted before, and people go, well, when you grow up, you'll understand that's not how the way the world works. And you're like, why? Well, I hope that like Jesus is still as faithful as I thought when I was 17 and I met Jesus.
Like you matured out of it.
Yeah,
right?
you matured out of it.
Yeah,
and this comes out of deconstruction. This comes out of this postmodern idea. And so what we're talking about is there's a difference between critical thought and the way of deconstruction. We can analyze things, ask questions, and be honest about the doubts we have. That's normal. Doubt can be a really important thing to grow our faith. It can make us ask questions to go to the next level of faith.
Right.
Deconstruction does the opposite. It begins to create more doubt and ask more questions of doubt. Now, a lot of things that propagate this is when we deconstruct, we start questioning the authority of things because we wonder if the intent of a person speaking or a book that we read or traditions we hold are of good intentions. And so when we find one bad intention, we throw everything else out.
Right.
And that's a problem with the problem with deconstruction. It throws the baby out with the bathwater. I know it's a terrible term to say, but it really does. You throw out so many good things.
That is a weird.
It is a weird term.
Sorry, keep going.
If you really
That
think
was-
about like
No, let's not think about it.
It's just bad.
Baby shouldn't be thrown. Keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, don't throw a
yes,
baby.
Yes. But we start throwing too many things out that are good, and we're seeing that in our culture all over the place. Cancel culture. We're seeing that with anything. Some things are good and some things are bad. It's either all bad or all good, and there can't be a little bit of both. So when you deconstruct, you take something for something as if something's bad, it's all bad.
Right.
When you are critically thinking, you go, okay, well, I'm gonna chew the meat and spit out the bones. Maybe that's a better way to put it. You're not gonna take everything you're sold here, but there are some good things that you can absorb in it. And so like the difference is like we've done real estate. You taught me how to do real estate.
I did. You're welcome.
Oh man, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But like there's a difference, when you've done renovations and things like that. So when you come in with a house inspection, it's a non-invasive inspection. The guy comes in,
What
a
do we have
professional.
here? What's wrong? Because you want to fix it
Yeah,
ultimately.
yeah, and they're going to have a critical analysis of the home. Is there defects that they can find? And so they'll look through, and that's a critical way of looking at something. And then they give you like a 30-page analysis of all of these things, and you read it and you go, okay, I understand the home I'm going to buy. You know, deconstruction is like demolition. It's like you're not even inspecting; you're just destroying. You could be inspecting, but as soon as you find like, you know, there's a leaky P trap.
Right.
You know,
the water
all you
heater
gotta
is
do-
bad. Let's tear down the
Right.
house.
Just tear down that exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what ends up happening far too often.
Right.
So if someone says deconstruction isn't bad, I'm just trying to think critically. Well, what we're trying to say is deconstruction in its intent is to tear down systems that even are half good. And it's okay to critically think. We're not saying critically thinking and asking questions and working through doubt is bad. Saying, no, let's absolutely do that. We're saying deconstruction, we buy it for what it is,
Right.
the intent of what it is,
Right.
can become very harmful.
Right.
But we tend to find ourselves in that place often because things happen to us. And we go, oh, man.
Right. We want to advocate inspection. We want to advocate people critically think about their faith, own
Right.
their faith, study their faith, seek God on a deeper and more meaningful level, especially as we grow. As we mature, we're not trying to mature out of Christianity.
Right.
We're trying to mature deeper into Christianity. And so there are questions that arise. We have to be able to answer those things. And I think also for the world that we live in, I mean, really, when our faith gets deeper and more robust, we're able to answer questions that people have. I was reading a guy, his name's Bart Campolo.
Yeah.
Tony Campolo's his dad. Tony Campolo's well known for progressive Christianity. He was large part of the emergent church and all of that
Right.
existed. And but Bart's his son, I believe, and he said this actually. He said, "I passed through every stage of heresy. It starts with sovereignty going, then biblical authority goes, then I'm a universalist, now I'm marrying gay people. Pretty soon I don't actually believe Jesus rose from the dead in a bodily way." And I thought that quote was interesting because actually I've seen this happen with people. I've seen them get on this path where first I feel like what happens is people will start to question the Bible.
Right.
How you get there is a number of ways, but
Right.
but usually I'll see people start to question the Bible in one way or another, not to ask questions of the Bible or to seek a deeper and more understandable way of a passage or where the Bible came from
Right.
or anything like that.
Totally.
But they end up questioning the Bible, and that is a slippery slope to
Right.
what he says. I ended up in universalism, and from universalism, he just ended up becoming an atheist.
Right.
That actually is the path. In fact, when I lived up north in Bothell, I saw that happen to East Lake Community Church.
Right.
And I felt like people were throwing stones at me when I started bringing it up because I said the same thing about Rob Bell. When Rob Bell and Velvet Elvis started to question the virgin birth, and one of his comments was, "You don't need to have the virgin birth to believe in Jesus."
Right.
And it was so interesting because all of a sudden you're like, well, if the virgin birth wasn't true,
Right.
then Jesus wouldn't be sinless. And he
Right.
didn't connect the sinlessness of Jesus being fully God, fully man, to his virgin birth. He couldn't be born through the line of Adam. This all gets cleared up in theology
Right.
that I would only know, that I only know because I've studied it. Now, there are things that I don't know, and I'm not claiming to know everything, but I
Right.
wanted to understand that,
Yeah.
so I studied it. Okay, what does the Bible actually say? But when I read Velvet Elvis, I was like, this guy's like playing around with things that are
Right.
historically orthodox.
Yeah.
And when you start to do that, inevitably what you're going to do is question everything. But I didn't feel that he had legitimate questions in his book. I didn't feel like it led me to a place of like introspection or
Right.
deeper study.
Right.
It wasn't about finding more meaning for the scripture. It was like, well, we don't really need this to have Christian faith. But what was interesting is that Rob Bell, over that period of time, he just kept taking steps down that logical path. Well, if you don't need this, and this maybe isn't true, and I don't think I can believe that, he just kept sowing into his skepticism. Now, I started saying that. At that time, I was like, hey, I don't think you should be able to say the things he's
Right.
saying. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to ask the questions that he's asking.
Right.
And there's a difference. And when I was trying to help my friends who really loved Rob Bell and remember the Numa videos? It was like, well, so that like we
Right.
want to be in the world today and know how to love people.
Right,
Like
yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
he always had a
I mean,
way.
it was the first like artistic
Yeah, it
expression
was
of things. Like,
and he was good at that. Like,
Right,
come
right,
on. Like, I'm
right.
not saying he wasn't good at it. I just remember one of our mutual friends showing me a Numa video for the first time, and I remember I was like hanging on to the words. Well, so I mean, it was super hip, and those
those
were
like
the
YouTube videos before YouTube, you know?
Those were the days where people were
Right.
talking about like the oil crisis and like he's wearing glasses that have more petroleum in them than like your glasses and your shoes have more petroleum
right,
in them
right.
than they need to for you to be talking about the oil crisis today. But anyways, I digress. My point, that's what people were like questioning. Like, should you really buy Hershey's chocolate because of the slave trade and all that kind of stuff? But all the while, people are having handbags that are. It was insane. It was just.
Right.
It was like, I get it. There's a lot wrong with the world.
Right.
But we were trying to say one thing and get on this sort of virtue signaling of how great we are to question Hershey chocolate, but we're doing just as much to damage the other side of the world and the other things that
Right.
we prefer.
Right.
But during those days, people were really flirting with Orthodox teaching and systematic biblical theology. And I was kind of calling it out.
Right.
And I felt like my fellow Christians were like,
Right.
how dare you say something about Rob Bell? You critic, you're critical, you're judgmental. And I was like, so this guy can question Orthodox Christianity, but I can't question this guy?
Right.
I was like, I wasn't calling him a heretic in those days.
No,
I
you
was
weren't.
just saying it was scary.
Right.
But my point is that what I wasn't saying and what I will not say is that it's wrong to ask questions
Right.
about your faith or about the Bible to
course
go
not.
deeper. You have to do that. Nobody I know has ever done that. Now, there are people that do that, like get in line, stay in line, don't ask questions, don't say anything.
Right. Yeah.
This is the way that it is. So I'm sorry for those that have gone through that.
Yeah.
I get that. I just haven't been raised in that. Personally, that's not
Right.
been my path.
One of the best ways just to be discipled was to ask questions.
Of course,
I mean,
yeah,
I sat on your couch before you even had a TV. You didn't even have a TV for a while,
That was
right?
good. That was probably a better way of life.
Yeah, it was. And we'd sit on your couch. I remember just being in one of the most vulnerable moments or times of my life at 19, just asking every question. And we were up late talking about, I just started reading the Bible and go, I have a question about that. I just started asking questions. And I grew rapidly because I just asked questions. That's not to make me better, but I'm just to say that questions are not a problem. Doubt that brings questions is not a problem. Dealing with it is what we want to do.
That's the key, yeah.
The problem is with deconstruction and just even what is his name? Campolo's.
Yeah, Bart, yeah,
Bart,
Campolo.
Bart's comment is that I think deconstruction wants to figure out the mystery behind it all.
Right.
And we have to just admit that's just simply not going to happen with an eternal God. And it's not going to happen in any sphere. We're never going to really know the true intent behind something, like to the fullest. If when we propagate that we do, we become conspiracy theorists. I know where this came from. I know the truth. Everyone's like, whoa, back off. You're just too much. But deconstruction wants to uncover mystery, where there's simply, we have to accept that there is some mystery to the virgin birth. Like, yeah, that sounds impossible because it's only happened once, right? Of course, it's a supernatural working of God. And if we believe that God is all powerful, if God is all creator, if God is all loving, can he do this for his people? That we have to answer that. Yes, he can do that. How? We won't even get those questions. We won't figure that out. But we won't figure out the biology of this. Like, how did this work out? We won't. And that's okay. We just have to be okay with those things. We have to, and so when we go through the deconstructive journey, we'll never be satisfied enough. It will lead us into a nihilistic place where we get in all-time lows because we just figure out, whoa, like, I don't even know what is up from down anymore because the purpose of life and truth is just to keep asking questions and, oh my gosh, and questions for question's sake, and that's the hard part about deconstruction, that is it can be a slippery slope. It can definitely do that to us.
Yeah, I haven't seen it lead to a lot of healthy places. I have seen disciples who ask questions
Right.
go to healthy places. And again, everybody has a right to do what they're
Right.
going to do. But at the same time, we're just talking about what's healthy.
Yeah.
I personally have not seen people that engage this path go to healthy places. I have seen plenty of disciples who ask lots of very hard and difficult questions go to healthy places, of course. I have questions. Sometimes as I'm talking to people, they talk to me like I don't understand.
Right.
You know, it's like, well, you've never been on the path of deconstruction, or you've never, it's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You're treating people like
Right.
like you have this unique experience where you're willing to do things the rest of us aren't willing to do. Actually, that's not true. You're processing it differently than I am.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make what you're doing more authentic
Right.
and more real. It doesn't mean that a person who's willing to like say, hey, that's not true.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you're more true to, you know, the path of learning.
Right.
I think everybody handles things differently. And I think we're living in a different time where there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of people that are influenced. We're influenced by a lot of our culture. We're influenced by a lot of modern philosophy. We're influenced by our hurts and our pains. In fact, I just want to actually go down that path for a little bit, because one of the things I did was I sat down and I wrote out like 10 things. Like, how do people get to the place? How do we get to the place where we start to deconstruct? Like, how do we get on the road of deconstruction to begin with? Because nobody just wakes up and says, well, I just want to challenge my faith and everything traditional and all things orthodox and every person that's an authority figure in my life. I just want to challenge all that because I'm not sure that I care or want to believe anything anymore. Like, nobody like wakes up like that,
Right.
You get on that path for a reason. And I don't have all the answers to that, but I wrote down some. And the first one that I thought of is as I've walked with people, is a tragedy happens.
Right.
So let's just say like a loss of a spouse or a family member, a death occurs, a sickness, a debilitating sickness, cancer, or something that won't leave you easily, that you have to walk with, chronic pain.
Right.
Chronic pain is a voice in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
When you see Job, in the story of Job, where he loses his family, essentially, and then after he loses his family, the enemy is allowed to touch his physical body. Well, once that happens, he starts to say things that he didn't say before. And I've sort of believed that when you read that, the story of Job is a lot of our own stories.
Right.
Going through loss, you have spiritual warfare,
Yeah.
things you don't understand that are going on behind the scenes, health issues, and then in the midst of that, you're grappling with who God is. I think the story of Job is really a lot of our stories, maybe in part. It's a story of life. And you're trying to figure out what you believe and stay true to God. God is good. God is holy. God is righteous. I think that I haven't done anything to get to where I am. Job was holding on to that. He was holding on like, I haven't done this. And then his friends thought he did. His friends were trying to say, well, what did you do to come here or get to this place? And that was their theology. So you're grappling with all kinds of different theologies, and that's getting questioned. You're getting frustrated by it. But then in the midst of that, at the end of this story, Job has a revelation of God. And he said, I heard of you with my ears, but now my eyes have seen you, and I repent.
Yeah.
What did he repent for? He repented for a lot of the way he was thinking about God. He said, now I've seen you. Not I'm corrected in some of my thoughts and my journey of getting, like, I've seen you. I didn't think properly about you. I didn't see you the right way. And because of that, I said a lot of things or did some things that I wouldn't otherwise do. And that's a lot of our journey. At the end of it, we want to see God. At the end of it, we want to experience God in a greater way to bring us to a deeper place.
Right.
The story of Job is tragic, and that's true for us. When we physically are dealing with something, or when we lose someone, and we begin to pray.
Right.
We begin to pray. We believe God. How many of us are believing God for healing or transformation or something, some tragedy we didn't plan for? People, think about planning your life, right?
Right,
And God's good. God blesses me. This is all good. How many of us have testified to the goodness of God in some kind of area of our life? Like maybe we were financially, we were doing great. And we say, bless God, he's blessed me, I'm doing great. And then bam, everything turns around and now you don't have any money.
Right.
You've got month, but you've got no money. And what you used to say was, bless God, he's taking care of me, he's providing for me. Now you don't have enough. And in that situation, you begin to ask questions. And sometimes your asking of questions can get you to a place where you're questioning God, not just asking questions of God. So I found tragedy is one of the ways, and difficulty, pain, is one of the ways that we get onto this path. Potentially. What else do you think? Have you seen? You walk with a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think primarily with this season, which was a unique season, I'm just going to focus in on 2020. People left church, and then they read or they watched what people comment about church. Yeah. And they create a caricature of what they actually had an experience of, and it morphed in their mind. So pastors are not caring about people because of X, Y, and Z, And so you've seen, like I've seen, people go, well, you're this way. I go, well, when have we talked about that? I just hear it through people. They won't even talk to me. And I'm okay. Like, they're going to make their choice, and okay, I'm going to do my best to reach out to them and love them and do what I can. But at some point, you go, like, we can clear up this caricature that you have created in your mind by just sitting down with each other. And I think it's easy to do that. But ultimately, it is, that aside, I think one big thing is like the church hurt problem, the church trauma problem, which I think is very true. I mean, everyone who's been a part of a church has been deeply hurt by people.
So have I.
Yeah, I have too.
I don't know why people don't think I haven't, or like, you don't understand, really.
Yeah. But I also
I get it. We get hurt.
People have made me really frustrated, and I've been disillusioned by how people have treated me, especially as a young man, and all those things. But at the same time, church has been where I've experienced the most generosity, the most grace, the most care I've ever experienced. Like, even in things that they've had to call me out on. Like, I'm a sinner, and I've affected the church poorly even before I was a pastor, and I've had to take correction. And I've seen, when I look back retrospectively, I go, wow, that was grace. I'm so thankful for those moments. Even if some things weren't done perfectly, I saw the intent of grace behind it. I've seen, for my family, my wife, and she's very open with her struggles, but has had a lot of mental health. And so when people talk about mental health and how the church has not been a safe place for those struggling with mental health, our story is the very opposite. The very opposite. Our pastors, including you, have run to our aid, have not belittled us. You have helped us and told us, we've leaned on your voices. What do we do in these moments? And we've seen the beautiful parts of church we've seen very minimal of the broken parts. I'm not trying to diminish anyone else's story. I know there's places that are horrific, and pastors who should not be pastors, they should quit a long time ago. They should have been removed. There's toxicity in all of that. Oh man, there definitely is. But it doesn't mean that Jesus's vision for the church is not his vision for the world, right? There's still something beautiful that God is trying to create in his body. And so we start deconstructing because we have a bad experience, and we go, oh man, they don't look like what the scriptures say, so this must not be all true. Or I wonder if it is true, and then they go down the road, but they stop trusting voices that can be trustworthy. And so they just go on their own journey. And usually when you isolate yourself and you keep a lot of questions, you find yourself in a place that you never thought you'd find yourself in.
Well, church hurt's this is a big topic, right? It's a huge, it comes up a lot. And there's a lot I could say about it, but it does cause many to get on this path to deconstruct their faith because they begin to question what they once trusted. So here's the reality is that I was publicly humiliated one time in a church publicly, and that was very difficult for me. I was 23 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. Wow. I won't go through it, but yeah, it was terrible, right? But I look back on that situation as I've gotten older, and the situation that occurred was not thought through. The people that did it weren't intentional. It wasn't premeditated. I've forgiven them. My heart is clean. But I could have just, honestly, that could have, after giving myself to many things in Scripture and in Christian practice and church, that could have been a defining moment for me. I look back and I realize that same situation, except by the grace of God, could have easily led me or anybody else into a very downward spiral.
Right.
That's one of the situations that I can look back and say, I can understand how a person can get hurt in a church or in a church context and go, to heck with this.
Right.
I get that. I really, really do. And so I'm not shaming people that have to grapple with, why did this happen? I also think when I was a younger man, I came to church and I thought leaders should be perfect. Mm-hmm. And so they let me down every single time.
Oh, yeah.
Every leader I've ever had always let me down. But I realized part of the reason they let me down wasn't that they sinned against me. It's that I thought that because they heard the voice of God or prophesied or they knew Scripture or they taught, that they also weren't working in progressive sanctification, which again, Christian theology needs to be deeply rooted and embedded into our own lives and understood. The more I've come to understand that we're all in a sanctifying process, that we're all becoming conformed to the image of Christ, I have to apply that to every person. Now, there are biblical qualifications for an elder, but I have to ask the question when I look at someone's life, does this disqualify them, or does it just mean they had a bad moment?
Right.
So by God's grace, I think I qualify as an elder, but I'm the first to say I have issues that I have to deal with, that I have to pray through, that my wife is 24 hours a day, I call marriage 24-hour accountability. That's probably not the right way to do it, but when you sleep next to somebody, you can't get away with like any noise or anything. You can't
You're
get away
trying to
with
sneak Oreos at 2 a.m., it's like, what is that, right? I'm just saying
no,
my
you're
problem.
judging.
I'm just saying my
shut
problem.
this down. I was going to say shut up, but that's conversation with Ben Dixon. We don't roll like that.
See, we're
but
just talking about
could you shut it down?
qualifications,
So church pain is real, and I think there's reason, and it does help. It does enable people to get on this path of deconstructing their faith, not necessarily in a positive way. But a lot of the reasons for me thinking through this, and as I've walked with people, I think that it's not just church pain. Sometimes we come into a church context for healing, and then we get battered and bruised in a situation that happens.
Right.
A lot of times it is because we have certain expectations that we bring to the table. We could have had that from family of origin. We could have heard that from a sermon. Pastor Ben, you said God wants to use us for anything, and I want to preach, and you're not telling me I can. And I'm like, right, let's get you to lead a Bible study faithfully for a year, and then let's move you to the youth group, and then let's have you do that for a period of time. I'm not saying God can't, we often associate things in our mind in a way that others aren't aware of.
Right.
And those become expectations and they get let down.
Right.
And then we villainize one another. Now, I've done it just like anybody else, so I totally get it. But this actually does lead people to start questioning everything. Right. They start questioning the sermon. They start questioning. I've had a lot of people start questioning me. Do you really mean what you say? Do you really believe what you preach? All of that stuff. The season of COVID was absolutely that. Do you really love people?
Right.
Are you a hired hand? Are you a charlatan? Are you somebody that's just and here's the overwhelming answer is I've had to work this out too.
Right.
I have. This has been hard.
Right. Yeah.
We have to do soul searching. Amen. But the concept of church and family is powerful to me.
Right.
And like you said, sometimes when people will bring up church, maybe we'll do a whole podcast on church difficulty. And I don't know if I like to use the word trauma clinically.
Right. No, totally.
But
it's just the buzzword right now.
Yeah, it is. But I totally understand that. And there are, when you have, the larger the church, the more room there is to get hurt, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know everybody in our church. I don't know where they're at. I don't know what they're struggling through. I don't know what they're saying to people. Sometimes I hear about it and I'm like, who said what to who? Is that really what happened?
Right.
So it is real. And I think in the midst of that, we're trying to paint this beautiful picture of what Jesus can do and is doing. And it's hard to get everyone's mind to see that and everyone's eyes to see that in the midst of painful things happening. It isn't to say painful things won't happen or difficulty won't come. It's to say that God can take that and he can conform us to his image. He can do with that what the world cannot do. We can forgive, we can love, we can choose to see each other without labels. That's a choice. It's a choice to follow Scripture. It's a choice to see each other better than our last worst day. All of that is true. And I've had to grapple with it, and so have you. But I just can remember as a young man having really high expectations, walking through the pain of being let down, and then coming to the realization that the church is full of people that are on the sanctifying path.
Right.
And that having doctrine, understanding doctrine helped me a lot. It tremendously helped me because I realized we're all in this together. We're all in this together, and we have to own our faith at a doctrine, not just because we have the right beliefs. That's not what I'm saying, like propositional truth. If you ascribe to propositional truth, everything works out. No, but you do need to know truth.
Right.
You do have to know it because that does help your experience when it doesn't pan out the right way. Another thing I wanted to segue into was sometimes the beliefs that we hold don't pan out the way that we're told.
Right.
The things that, like, for example, if we believe in healing or we believe in prayer, personal transformation. I had a friend who struggled with pornography for, I think, 3 to 5 years. I don't know. He got saved right about the same time I did. And as God dealt with all of our sexuality and all that, the Lord gave me a certain level of purity a lot quicker than for him. And I didn't know he had a very deep-seated porn addiction. I didn't know that. In fact, 2 of my very closest friends had very deep-seated porn addictions, and they never told me. So that was one issue, was like, I actually never knew until it blew up. One of my friends fully deconstructed his faith, lost everything. Underneath it, he had an addiction to pain medication and porn addiction, deep porn addiction.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I'm one of his best friends. He never told me. I actually found out my friend had these addictions when it blew up.
Right.
And I was really angry, actually. I was really angry at him. And so now he's fully deconstructed his faith. He doesn't believe any of it. And some of that came from the pain of his childhood. But I was angry at him because I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Like, I remember confessing some of my own like lustful thoughts to him as a young guy. Like, we're praying together. I'm confessing some of my lustful thoughts to him. And he didn't tell me he had this deep porn addiction. And I'm like, well, what were all those years of me telling you what I was going through?
Right.
So I was really offended, and I was really confused because this is one of my closest friends.
It wasn't like you were a safe place. I mean, you were being
I was
vulnerable
telling him my own stuff.
Right, totally.
Yeah, and that was confusing. Like, why did I bare my soul to you and you not even open, like pop the cork to me?
Right.
So again, I'm not trying to blame him. it was confusing to me.
Yeah.
Like, why did you process the same truth that we both had? Like, we were there praying together. We were reading the scripture. The Bible says, confess your sins one to another and pray for each other that you might be healed. And I'm giving you mine.
Right.
And in exchange, you're barely giving me anything.
Right.
And it was confusing. Anyways, that was the first, that was one situation. Another friend of mine struggled with a deep-seated porn addiction for like 3 to 5 years. And I can remember sitting with him in my car one day, talking with him. And he literally said to me, he goes, God can't change me. I've prayed, I've believed. God can't change me. I don't believe any of this stuff anymore.
Wow.
And I was so shocked. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it was going from 0 to 60 in a second.
Right.
Because I'd walked with this person for a long time. And his life was totally changed by God. So this addiction that he had, that I wasn't really aware of that much, it was part of like this, eroding foundation, and it was just eating at him. And I didn't know that. Like, I would have been praying with him and helping him and believing him. And like my freedom in the Lord that God gave me by his grace, I didn't have freedom in every single issue, but in that issue was kind of like this disdain. So he kind of held me at a distance because of what God did in me and didn't do in him. So for him, he started to deconstruct his faith, or fully did. We didn't call it that back then.
Right.
But he just walked away from God because he was like, this isn't true.
Right.
Because it hasn't happened to me.
Right.
So when a belief doesn't fully pan out, instead of walking in that moment-by-moment transformation, week by week, year by year, and contending for that change, not in this beating yourself up, but like understanding that you're the righteousness of God in Christ,
Right.
and believing that what Jesus paid for was not only for you to be forgiven, but cleansed. And it does take some people longer
Right.
to walk through sanctification. But we often forget the other things that God took out of our life.
Right.
And that's what I tried to tell my friend before he totally walked away from the Lord. And I said, look, you've been changed. So many areas of your life are different.
Yeah.
I mean, things that you've done for God, there's so much change. But it was that area that was eating at him and eroding. And he's like, I can't live with this. And I don't believe this anymore. And so I'm just bringing that up because I've watched how the lack of healing or unanswered prayer or none of this can be true. Like I remember a couple, I'm taking up all our time.
No, you're good.
This is Conversations with Ben Dixon.
With Ben Dixon.
But today it's with Trevor Loya.
Yes.
But I had a couple one time, and this is where, being a Pentecostal charismatic Christian, we believe in the power of God and all of that, but we don't overlook the process. And sometimes I've had people size me up and say, well, you believe in miracle signs, wonders, automatic, immediate healing and deliverance, like you don't have to walk through anything. That's so not true. Okay, so yes, we pray for people to be delivered of massive sins that are cycles that they can't rid themselves of because we need God to help us.
Yeah, totally.
So I do believe in freedom, but I don't lack a process, like an understanding of progressive sanctification. And so I've been indicted for that, like over the years many times. I remember one couple, and they just this is just funny, but they ended up writing something about it, like their experience with Ben Dixon. I don't remember. I don't recommend that you go look this up. But there was, there are things, if you did look it up, there might be. So somebody sent me a blog that a couple had written about me and my ministry. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, and it was like how the overarching thing was how Pentecostals are just out of their minds. They think God is just this genie in a bottle. And then so they brought up this scenario with me, which was completely false. And I mean, once again, no communication, weren't willing to talk to me about it. All of that was evidence. And I'm not trying to justify myself, but I was so shocked when I read it. I thought, guys, you could just literally have an appointment with me and discuss this with me.
And be cleared up in the
You
minute.
listened to 2 sermons and you thought you're an idiot or whatever they thought about me. But none of what they said was true. And I was like, well, gosh, at least get it right? If you're going to publish something, at least get it right.
I'll
if
give
you
you quotes.
disagree,
Yeah.
if you disagree and you're a cessationist, okay, fine. We do disagree, but at least fully represent my beliefs. But I do think, once again, I think that sometimes we hear a sermon or a teaching and we assume that's the fullness of theology.
Right.
And we go, that's not my experience, so all of this is a sham.
Right.
Which, again, could lead to understanding their superficiality in our own understanding of what the Bible even teaches. So we're throwing out not what the Bible teaches, but we're throwing out what we think it teaches.
Right.
Instead of going in deep and saying, what does it teach?
Right.
What does it say? What am I supposed to believe here? Which is, again, inspection and introspection and theological question rather than deconstruction.
Right.
All of that being a healthy thing. But instead of doing that, we're going to go deconstruction because it's easier to just literally throw myself to the flesh. And let's just be honest, like at some point, the flesh is the easier option.
100%.
I could say that for myself. The flesh is an easier option. It's easier to fly off and get angry than pray for those who despitefully use me.
Right. Yeah.
And I've wrestled with that. Like, I want to just say, I don't want to deal with this. I want to say, I don't really see the point in this. But when I read the words of Jesus, he leads me a different path. And I have to struggle with that because it's not like automatic.
Right.
That's why you need the words.
Right.
Like the words are there to lead us on a better path.
Yeah.
But anyways, I've got like 10 things I told you. They're all podcast worthy.
Well, I think part of that too is like the old the expression. I remember hearing it all the time when people were evangelizing me. Like the devil owns the fence. Like, are you on the fence with Jesus? Like,
that'll
the devil,
preach.
The
That's
devil
a good
owns the
sermon.
fence.
The devil owns the fence.
Right. You can't be on there. And I see.
Can I use?
Oh yeah,
that
we can
as-
just. I don't know. I didn't
Keep going.
originate
I'm
it.
sorry.
I
That's
mean,
good.
I did.
It's really good.
Quote me. It's trademarked. No, but like. But there's a lot of people who have unattended faith in their life. And when they do, when they have a belief and they have maybe the upbringing, but it's been like secondary to other things in their life growing up. So for example, Fuller did a study on what was, when they watched people walk away from Jesus, was it because college? Was it because the universities taught them? Was it, what was it? What was the key factor? What they said was families who do not make church and faith a priority. So that means in our world, people will say, well, we got soccer on Sunday morning, we can't make it. Or my kid can't go to youth group. Not that church brings about the only way to be saved. But when you're a disciple, you build your life around the priorities of what a disciple is. And we can look in the scriptures and say Bible, prayer, worship, community, together, mission with Jesus. Those are just 5 essential quick things that we should build our life around.
Yeah, and your family,
And when you have that secondary to other things, other activities in your life, work and enjoyment and other things like that, there becomes a lack of a priority. And they're saying when you have a lack of priority, it's like the deal's done when you get to the university and they start hearing all these other ideologies and you go, well, it's secondary anyway to my life, so I'm going to throw this out, and it's just easier to live in that place. And what we're having to deal with right now as the church is that churches that aren't missional in this COVID weird moment that's kind of going to last a long time, churches who aren't missional and helping people live on mission with Jesus and make Jesus the primary thing in their life will die. They're saying this. These are things coming out right now.
They're already dead.
Yeah,
That's the manifestation. You're dead if you're not on mission with Jesus.
Right. But a lot of the church, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've served the church and we are merciful to people in process who are, slowly getting on track with Jesus and slowly getting involved. We love everyone who walks in, even the most consuming people. We try to love them best, when they come into our churches. But a disciple is not, they're a consumer of God's word, but they're an active participant. And that are willing to count the cost for Jesus, willing to surrender their will to Jesus to do whatever he asks them to do. And we need that part of people.
Right.
Because those who are on the fence, lukewarm, or living their faith secondary, it's easy to take the back door out, like you said, the flesh is always the easier way. Right. And when there's a clearer line in the sand in these days that we're in, it's just going, okay, well, I'm just trying to look for comfort. And so I'm just going to go wherever comfort is, or, they just follow their temptation. And so I feel like that can happen a lot of times. And it's not so much doubt, it's just the path of least resistance, and they deconstruct so they don't have to be accountable to something they once believed.
Deconstruction becomes an option to kind of justify where you're at.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, no, that it's not something I thought about, but that's really true and very important to understand.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we need to help people.
What about like young people? Like, for example, I came to Christ when I was 19, and hardly anybody at the moment did, but then there were 2 people that did right in that time, and then multiple, like 6 months, 7 months later. So for me, I can remember the first time I ever went to a young adult group, just as a way of illustration. I went to a young adult group, and like literally after the young adult group, I'm not even old enough to drink alcohol, and everybody goes to Sherry's. That's Sherry's back in the day.
Sherry's.
If your name is Sherry, we're sorry. But yeah, I know there is a Sherry that I deeply love, and you're watching this. I love you. Sorry. It's very true. But after the young adult group, everybody went to Sherry's, and all of those folks that were over 21 went into the bar, and they, for the most part, got hammered. And they weren't just having a beer; they got hammered. It was like, let's go worship and hear the word, whatever the group was like. This is my first time to a young adult group, and I came out of drugs, alcohol, and sexual sin.
Right.
And now I'm at church, and I'm like, and I hadn't gone to a young adult group for a while as a Christian. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I didn't know church culture. So I go to a young adult group, and then I go into the one part of Sherry's that I could go into and to get something to eat with this group of people I didn't know. And then I looked at the larger majority group, went to the bar to get smashed, and I thought, I don't need church to do this. Like, so like I could tell there were a lot of people in that group that were on their way to whatever that was. I don't know why they were doing what they were doing or whatever, but I was literally like offended because I came out of that life.
Right.
And I think the difference is there were people that were raised in church and they were going to church all the time, but it wasn't like their own faith.
Right.
Okay. So then like you're confronted, like, so for me, I didn't have my own faith. Like from the time I was 12, 13, I was doing drugs and drinking. So then when I woke up, when Jesus got me, it was a supernatural shift.
Right.
So then you take a guy like me and you bring me to the young adult group, and I'm not jiving with anybody.
Right.
I'm like, what is going on? You know?
Right.
And yeah, I had to deal with like self-righteousness and all that stuff, but really there was the grace of God that changed me.
Right.
And now I'm trying to find a group of people that want to pray and read the Bible and all this stuff that I would never be caught dead doing a year ago. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. I'm in church 5 times a week. All of my friends thought I was a nut.
Right.
Like, they're like, you just have an addicted personality, and now you've put all your addiction on this God figure. And I'm
Right.
like, not, it's just super weird, It was like, that's what I was told. I was working at a company, and a gal behind me was like Hindu, yogi, I don't know what her deal, like she was super like Eastern thing and meditative and all
New
that.
age kinda, yeah.
She was like, I meditate every day to get my peace and all this. It's just how she was. But she was always irritable. And she told me, she was like, I have to meditate every day to get my peace. And I was like, okay, I've never had to do that, but like, you're still not that peaceful. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that, but like you did you not stay in the sauna for an extra half an hour? Like, so in her mind, everybody needed to do
Sorry.
No, I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah, right.
I was not 20 years old, and this woman that worked behind me was like, 10 years older than me. And I'm a brand new Christian. And I'm trying to like love her, and she's patronizing me like every day for me.
Totally.
From a very, because of my beliefs, and she believed that the stuff she practiced made her peaceful, and she was everything but that. And I thought, can you not see the problem here, lady? Like, I literally have to dread coming to work and pray for you every day just to overcome your lack of peace. When you're trying to convince me to get peace, I got to do what you're doing. I think not. What you're selling, I'm not buying. Sorry.
Right.
That was therapeutic. But that was my first year of Christianity. And since I came in and I got radically changed, and I'm trying to figure out like what's going on with me, and I'm looking for people to help me with that. And then I go to this group of people and I'm like, well, they're not going to be able to help me because they're going down a road that I came out of. But what I didn't know then, and I know now, is that they were more raised in the church. And so as a result of that, they had to come to own their faith, right? So they're sowing their wild oats and whatever. And they had to walk to this place of like, what do I believe? What is true? How do I practice Christianity? They hadn't gone through the things that I had gone through. It doesn't mean they hadn't gone through temptation or life or had challenges.
Right.
But I came out of a certain way of life, and they're flirting with that way of life. And I think sometimes people that grew up in the church and have always had kind of that, maybe potentially like a little bit of a bubble, they go to university or whatever, and they have their faith gets challenged. When they're 21 and now they can go drink, their faith is challenged.
Right.
When they're faced with friends who are, influencing them strongly in other things, saying, "Hey, this stuff isn't really that bad. Why are you such a prune? What's your deal?" They're getting challenged, and it actually shows how strong your faith is. Not how awesome you are, but like, are you invested in the Bible? Are you invested in prayer? Are you are you walking with God in a way, or has He changed you enough in a way where it's gonna land when you're tested, right? So I had to watch other people go through that, but I came out of something into this.
Right.
Other people had to walk through that transformative process. And I just wonder if there are people watching today and you're younger and you have to own your faith for yourself. The thing I would advise is be careful who you listen to, because I think the enemy is highly invested in people's demise and destruction.
Right.
And there's a part of this that we haven't discussed and probably won't have time for, and that is there are demonic powers.
Right.
And part of the way that the enemy comes against us is ideological warfare, not just culturally, but even personally, sowing seeds of doubt, seeds of thought that would lead us down another path. Doubt is an experience that we all have, but unbelief is a practice. And the enemy wants to get us to a place where we literally disbelieve and we're living out unbelief, and we don't subscribe to anything Christian or anything close to it for that matter. And there's an element of spiritual warfare that some don't want to acknowledge. And that's part of why the naturalistic, intellectual, philosophical side won't bring that up, because then it's like, well, you're scapegoating this entire conversation by saying it's a demon behind every rock. That's not what I'm saying.
No. Yeah.
But I am watching young people get attacked. For example, if 9 out of 10 young people, young men in particular, are literally not just flirting with pornography, but they're looking at it, when they go to church, they're feeling guilty every time a preacher reminds them of walking in a holy way. And so instead of actually dealing with their own sin and saying, God, help me, they're saying, well, that person, that preacher must have his own issues.
Right.
That's deflection. Right. That's blame. Instead of saying, asking the question, how did you get free?
Right.
Which requires humility.
Right.
The option of the flesh is to say everybody else is a liar.
Right.
And there are some. You can find people who hid in the closet and they had that secret life of sin and they committed that adulterous affair and they were addicted to pornography and they didn't really get free and they were living a duplicitous life. You can find those examples not just in the church but anywhere. You can find them at Walmart and Fred Meyer's and you know. Yeah. So I'm just saying that when you're young and you grew up in the church, you have to find a way to own your faith.
Right.
And challenging your faith is start by going deeper. Study something you don't understand.
Right.
I don't understand transformation. Pastor Ben, you talked about freedom, but I'm not free.
Right.
Okay, well here's 15, 20 Bible verses. Study the context. Pray about this. Have you confessed your sin? Have you practiced the Bible? Not because I'm trying to make you feel guiltier, but I'm just trying to say, in an honest way, if we're going to test the tenets of the faith, you have to at least appreciate and understand what they are and ask yourself if you practice them. Because if you haven't, you can't challenge the truth of something if you haven't understood it and practiced it.
Right.
And then if you have, you need to get outside consultation by a trustworthy source.
Yeah, get humbled. I mean, you just got to humble yourself.
And say, have I done the right thing?
Right.
Because I've needed that. I call friends, right now I call friends when I make decisions based on Scripture and say, did I do the right thing? Why do I do that?
Right.
Because I want to make sure I'm seeing this the right way.
Right. Because we can miss the mark. We can just miss it when we're isolated.
I've missed the mark, man.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so lots of things. But young people have to understand their faith. They have to come to appreciate their own faith.
And I think that realizing, just to even cap the demonic thing, we look for temptations as what are physical, earthly pleasures, and that we're tempted by pleasures, but we are tempted also by ideologies. We're tempted. Right. The enemy uses those to bring them into a different way of thinking. It's tempting to us, just like maybe being a temptation of pleasure would be, and some people are more than others tempted to go to. I have some friends who are just really sensitive, and so the real progressive movement. We'll open a bigger jar here, but I've seen them question so much because they're so they lean towards a level of compassion that is I want to make sure everyone feels fully accepted, and so I'm tempted to let go of boundary lines of truth. And they're constantly tempted to do that. And we go, well, you need to know that temptation. So when we talk about purity, for example, we say, well, how do you make sure you live in purity in a righteous way? You put up some good fences in your life and bring up accountability. Well, the same thing with some of these ideologies. Let's ask these questions. Well, why do we not equate love with acceptance? All the questions that we have today, which is another podcast. But, just create some healthy boundaries and healthy conversations, and most of the pastors I know, if not all that I know that I have a relationship with, will accept your questions. It's not gonna you won't be put to shame with the doubts or the temptations you carry.
Oh, true. I mean, I met with a young guy in my office. He considers himself an atheist, and he spent about an hour challenging my beliefs, some of which, by the way, and I totally appreciated the fact that he met with me. So if you're
Right.
watching, thank you for meeting with me. I thought that was not only courageous of you, but respectful. You challenged, if you're watching, I'm assuming he's watching, maybe, but challenged my beliefs. And that was kind of interesting to me. And there were a lot of beliefs that he challenged that I don't hold. Right, so he was kind of just saying like, "Hey, I won't get into it, but there were that is another podcast. But again, there's the assumption that like what you believe about creationism and what you believe about Scripture and what is literal, what isn't literal, and all those kinds of things. And so he kind of saw me as a conservative Christian without asking me any questions, and that's another. That's really another issue, by the way, is that we don't ask a lot of questions. Now, he was in my office, and so it gave me the opportunity to challenge back what he thought I believed. And I was able to do that, and then he kind of didn't, to be honest with you, I think he just didn't know what to do with some of my I was like, well, I don't believe that, and a lot of people I know don't believe that. So it was an assumption, so that usually means that you're listening to voices outside of who you should be asking.
Yeah.
Now, again, let me just say a thing that I think is really important. One of the primary ways that people get on the path of deconstruction is that they listen in a heavy way. They listen to voices of people that just don't believe Jesus at all.
Right.
Okay, so for example, when I was a youth pastor, and I'm going to back up, probably one of the reasons why I don't struggle with the deconstruction option. Not that I don't have questions, not that I don't ever have doubts, not that I don't ever have to grapple and wrestle with stuff. I do. Everybody I know does. But the reason I'm not like the option of like, I don't believe God created everything anymore, like why I don't go down those roads, I think has a lot to do with the fact that I don't open myself up to, I seek to read about philosophy, philosophical thought, ideological understandings. I try to read that stuff, certain theories, because I want to understand it. But I don't literally spend my hours listening to people who are,
Right.
Who preach, just like if you listen to me preach the Bible, who preach their own Bible, in a
like
different.
deconstruction is the way to truth.
I don't
Truth. Yeah.
spend my. So
Right.
what I learned was the voices in our life affect the choices of our life. I've learned that principle. It's very true. When I was a youth pastor, it was so difficult for me to even close to be a youth pastor. Honestly, it was a horrible experience. And this is why. It wasn't because I didn't love the kids, I did.
Yeah.
But I felt like I couldn't help them. Mm-hmm. I had literally had an hour and a half on every Monday night. I don't know why our group was on Monday nights, but it was. Every Monday night I had an hour and a half with the kids. In that time, we're supposed to figure out worship. We didn't have a worship leader. We're supposed to figure out worship. We're supposed to have some kind of fun, some kind of game time. I want to provide them snacks because you're supposed to just give them as much sugar as possible. And then you're supposed to give some meaningful, relevant word that's going to transform their lives and help them understand a robust theology, right? No. Then Sunday, they go to church with their family, and they were also on Sundays put into youth group with me. So I get twice a week. Most of the time on Sundays, they weren't awake, okay? I mean, literally their eyes were crusty shut. And and especially the kids that did athletics, they were just like, "Why am I here?" Right. I'm like, Bible, Jesus, eternal life. I was trying to help
salvation.
them. Yeah, those are the pastor's kids. So I was trying to help people, and I honestly, I always feel like I failed at being a youth pastor. I really mean that. Like, if I qualified ministry, or if I thought my future had anything to do with ministry, and I based that on my being a youth pastor, I would have quit midway. But thank God for His grace. The kids would come to my youth group, and I would talk to them about purity. And the rest of the week, they were listening to music that said, "Have sex, have a lot of sex, and here's how sex can look." They're listening to music in their earphones while they're at youth group.
Yeah.
About this sexualized, rebellious stuff, right? So let's call it an ideology. It's not just music, friends.
Right.
It's an ideology. They're watching stuff that's telling them all that. Their parents allow them to do all that stuff and listen to all that stuff like it's not matters. Like, we put bars on windows in bad neighborhoods, but we don't put any like restrictions on internet. It's crazy. Because that's where they're really getting hurt and affected. they're listening to, they're watching to, their friends are acting this out. They're in secret. They're doing this. Many of the boys were on pornography, feeling guilty, making fun of all those kinds of things. They don't want to talk about it. They're scared to death. I caught one of them actually literally on a pornographic site when I went to go meet him at his house. That's how addicted he was, that he was willing to like be on the computer in the house with his parents in the other room, and I'm literally walking up to the front door, and the blinds were open, and I saw him on, it was horrific, and I had to tell his parents, and they hardly did anything about it. So I thought being a youth pastor is horrible because I'm sorry for youth pastors, but you have to find a new strategy. And I honestly, I didn't want to do it. I was a father of 2 teenage boys at the same time, and I'm trying to parent the 2 teenage boys, and I'm trying to be a youth pastor. The culture, friends, the world, the internet was all telling them, just in the issue of purity, have sex as much as you want in crazy, grotesque ways. Then Ben Dixon, youth pastor, is saying, live in purity. God's blessing and God's best is found in your obedience to Him and to His Word. He can transform you. The influence were so heavy. I'm trying to paint this picture. The influences were so many and so heavy. When these kids came to listen to me, the only thing they felt was guilt.
Yeah.
The only thing that they associated with my preaching was, you are telling me something's wrong with me and I just feel guilty and I don't want to be around you. So they didn't want to come to church. They didn't want to listen to what I had to say, even though I was trying to help. I wasn't preaching against them.
Right.
I was preaching against sin, and I was trying to help them on the path of purity, Reconstructionism, reconstructing your life, purifying your life. But deconstruction was an easy option because these voices were so inundating the way that they thought and the way that they lived that they couldn't conceive of another path.
Right.
And so what I'm trying to say is that I learned, even being a youth pastor, that you cannot have 5 influences in this lane and one or half of one or some of one in this lane and deal with that in a way that you're going to be successful.
Right.
So when sometimes people will come to me, Pastor Trevor, and they'll ask me, or they'll say to me, I've had people say this, and maybe you said this, if the shoe fits. Pastor Ben, you just believe that if I read the Bible more and I pray more, then I'm going to be everything I should be. And I'm like, I've never said that. What I am saying is that if you read the scriptures and if you pray and you seek God and godly counsel and you invite these influences into your life that God has given to us, if you follow that, the chances of you becoming what the Bible teaches is great.
Right.
But you also have to decrease these other voices in your life. You have only so much time. You've got to choose the voices in your life. But you cannot have these inundating voices. You cannot have all these voices blaring at you and expect to be as successful as we're talking about. There's no way. So in my life, I have to regularly turn these voices off.
Right.
And they medicate you. Even just television, right? Even just too much television. It medicates you, even if it's not utterly sinful. My point is just to say, sometimes getting on the path of deconstruction is just not that... It's not that mysterious. It can simply just happen because the people that you've chosen to listen to in your life in an overwhelming
100%.
way are the ones that are encouraging you down this path directly or indirectly. And it isn't. And I know you can take what I'm saying right there, and you can say, "Well, you're just telling me to get in line, stay in line, keep my head down, and do what I'm told." I'm not actually.
Right.
I am saying the voices in your life affect the choices in your life.
Right.
And be a youth pastor, and you'll find that out real quick.
Or a parent.
Or a parent.
Right.
And my hat goes off to all the parents that are trying to do that. Now, can we close on one last thought? Because honestly, I could bring up a lot of things. Like, why do people get on the path of deconstruction? And I want to ask you about this. I think sometimes we finally deal with a teaching or a thought or a theological concept that never made sense to us. I think we finally start to deal with that and go, okay, I need to get to the bottom of this, but we are already sort of jaded by the time we get there, and so we're not really dealing with it as much as we are just trying to, we're throwing it out. Instead of, again, introspection, inspection, theological question, do that. Also, the LGBTQ perspectives get challenged, and a lot of people today are using that as sort of the main reason why they've got on the path of deconstruction. In other words, the church hasn't treated gay people the right way, and even their ethic of love isn't really loving. And they're again, acceptance and love are equated to being the same thing, and we could extrapolate that. Family hypocrisy.
Right.
Will you see a duplicity in your home? Mom and dad say one thing, do another. And not just kind of, like my kids they don't see me as perfect, but I actually, honestly, you can go literally, and I mean this, like you can ask my kids what our family life is like. You can. I actually think when you're healthy that you're not afraid of what your children are going to say. You know what I'm saying? My kids are my kids. But like if what we are is real, authentic, I mean, progressively not progressive Christianity, progressively walking with God,
Right.
we're going to have our issues. My kids are not going to say that I'm perfect or my wife is perfect. We're going to have them. We should be able to be honest about them. But our kids should not see that full duplicity, right? Like where I'm cussing somebody out and I'm smoking a blunt and like,
Like acting like it didn't happen.
yeah, I mean like, and not asking for forgiveness. And they get up. My kids are on the front row, 11:30 service, taking notes. Dad, did you mean that?
You go home, right?
They're like comparing notes. Like Azariah's
Right.
looking at Judah. Write that one down.
Yeah.
We're gonna bring that up for Tuesday family devotions. Hey, Dad, did you mean to say this about yourself? No, I meant to say that about you. Anyways, but the last one. Can we have a little fun today?
Yeah.
Anyhow, the last one that I want to ask you about is intellectual conflict. Okay, because today I think that a lot of the supernatural stuff is getting challenged, and I would also say interpretations of the Bible in light of modern science. I think and modern thought and philosophies. I think this becomes a massive problem. So, for example, I've heard a lot of deconstructionists talk about how the Bible it's preposterous to believe that Jonah and the whale. These kinds of things. The first 11 chapters of Genesis, on and on and on it goes. And so there's sort of this intellectual conflict that they have that wakes them up to questioning it all. So I'm just curious, again, because I get these challenges and interpretations of the Bible and so on, where do you find this to be a massive opening up to a true deconstruction path that's destructive?
I think it's all about where we base our trust in authority. So, Reformation, sola scriptura, the Bible has this deep authority. Or does science, naturalism, materialism, whatever else isms that they're out there that we trust, right? And we have to ask the question, like, are they reliable? And so I've come to the conclusion the Bible is the most reliable book historically we can put our trust in.
Right.
And we don't have time, but there is so much evidence that the Bible is historically accurate. And the events in the Bible are historically accurate from what we know and the metric we use to build history and to know whether or not things happened or not. It beats a lot. That's why right now no one can refute the Bible on that level.
Right.
They try
on a
to.
general macro way. Yeah. It's always the micron.
There's like
stuff.
micron of the supernatural, right? But in terms of going back and so
I've read the contradictions. I've read,
Right,
I've been looking into a lot of
Everyone
like what
has.
people believe about that
for
now.
2,000 years, that's what we've been dealing with. I mean, Christians aren't dumb. There's been smart people who have asked these questions, before us. And I think the intellectual thing is who do we end up just wanting to trust as our authority? It's really just bottom line of that,
I was watching some lectures by a guy named Bart Irwin, and he writes a book called Misquoting Jesus, and it's kind of interesting because he does basically say, if I understand him correctly, he does basically say that there's a lot of historical accuracy to the Bible, and he even will not deny some of these realities, but he he challenges a lot of the contradictions. So I actually went through, he has this lesson on contradictions. So I went through some of those contradictions just because I randomly wanted to, because I know that we live in a time where when there's intellectual conflict, people have questions. So I wanted to see what skeptics and non-believers, he was a believer at one time and he became an atheist. And now he literally is an evangelist for atheism. He's a massive evangelist for atheism. Anti-Christian is really, he's not an atheist. He's actually more of an anti-Christian atheist. And I was looking at some of his contradictions and I was like, he's a scholar. And I'm like, wow, like I'm not a scholar, but some of these contradictions that he lists are actually really simple and it didn't help his argument. Now, there were other ones that I would consider a level of mystery. He concludes, and I don't think it's fair to conclude what he does, but I think his challenge is that on the other side, those who are Christians pre-conclude things that can't be truly concluded on. I don't disagree sometimes with some of the things he said, but I was like, you're doing the exact thing that you're saying Christians are doing, but Christians are going with the mountain of evidence, whereas you're trying to pull out all these contradictions. But as I read, I mean, the first three ones that I did, I should bring them next time. We should just do a reliability of Scripture podcast.
Right, it'd be really good.
But I was a little surprised that a leading scholar who wrote a book on this understands Greek and Hebrew. His contradictions were solved by synoptic gospels, and just having an understanding of 4 different pictures of the same event are going to bring about different detail. And while he understands that deeply, I was surprised of the contradictions that he brought up. I couldn't believe it. I'll bring those next time on a Reliability of Scripture podcast. But what I would say, once again, this goes back to who we're listening to.
Yeah.
When you have an intellectual conflict, and seeing the refuting. I like debates. My kids love debates. I don't know what I'm breeding in my home here, but I'm Miss Dixon. I partially blame you, but it's very important. It's very important to, again, when you have an intellectual conflict, I think a lot of us just don't go very far in discovering this. Okay, so let me close with this challenge, okay? And you're going to get your final thoughts.
Okay. Yes.
I have this belief that one of the reasons that our not we have doubt, but our doubt remains and grows, is because we don't satisfy it and we don't try. Okay, so again, I'm going to go after personal responsibility. So put on your seatbelt here for a second. I know that's what I'm doing, but if you have never studied where the Bible comes from, what the Bible is, and what the Bible is for. Like literally, if I ask you the question, where does the Bible come from? How was the Bible put together? Who wrote the Bible? When was it constructed, the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament, and when were they brought together? If you can't answer that question, that means that you've got a lot more digging to do.
Right.
And I encourage every Christian to know the answers to those questions, because I think to have intellectual integrity, whether it's for yourself or with your children or with people that are going to be skeptical in your life, or just to satisfy that potential future doubt that you're going to have, that you feel like you went to that level and you did do the discovery and you did dig deeper. If you do that, it will fortify your faith. And I'm speaking as one who has done that. I mean, I can go a lot farther and a lot more issues. I will forever be studying God's Word and seeking to understand spiritual truth. I'm not the guru, but in our bookstore at Northwest Church, I have the book, How We Got the Bible. And the reason that I use that book is because it's only 350 pages versus Joshua McDowell's Evidence That Demands a Verdict is like 900 pages. Like, thank you, Mr. McDowell. But it's a view, a historical view, and a real important understanding of how the Bible came together. And I think the majority of us can't answer that question. And I'm not saying that for guilt, but for personal responsibility's sake. If we're finding ourselves dealing with a lot of doubt as it pertains to the Bible, which you brought up, authority. We're questioning authority. Well, number one authority we're questioning is the Bible.
Right.
Because the Bible, the structure, the substructure and the foundation of the Bible is what we base our faith on. And if you erode that foundation, you've got nothing.
Right. Correct.
And that's what I saw when I brought up East Lake Community Church up in Bothell. in their early days, they grew to like 5,000, 6,000 or something like that. But then the pastor started to go down these roads of disbelieving the scriptures.
Yeah.
And I remember when it happened, and I just thought, and I said to our pastor friends at the time, I said, this church will cease to be a church. And now he's a Buddhist. Ryan Meeks is a Buddhist that leads people on high-dose mushroom trips. That's what he does. And he likes the teachings of Jesus that line up to what he thinks is love is a gift or life is a gift and love is the point. I mean, whatever fits into the framework of how you define love and life, you like those teachings of Jesus, but the other ones, not so much. And that's my point is that when people start flirting with that, instead of going deeper to understand it, all of a sudden you will deconstruct. And I've watched it happen, and he deconstructed in front of a church, which made them deconstruct. And that's probably the worst thing someone can do. It's one thing if you're going to go down a path of discovery and deconstruction. It's another thing if you're going to do it in a microphone.
Right.
I mean, seriously, like that to me is as traumatic as anything you're going to bring up about church culture, because you literally just led everybody else into this place of discovery. And if you wake up in 5 or 10 years and you go, man, I was wrong, I hope you understand what you did.
Yeah.
And that's the painful part of why a person like me was correcting that and saying something about it at that time. And I'm okay to name names, not because I want to cast some shadow on anybody's name or to, in a self-righteous way, we're better than that group of people, but rather like, okay, fine, you deconstructed your faith, you had doubt that you weren't able to solve, but you did it in a microphone and you led other people into this new religion that you constructed, and that to me is church trauma.
Right. Oh.
And all the way you did that, you called out everybody else's church trauma and you let everyone off a cliff. So
called a false teacher.
I just don't buy some of that where it's like church trauma leads us to question everything, and in your questioning everything, like you're not leading everybody into another layer of exactly the same thing that you're running from.
Right.
And so this season of time that we're in, it can bring out some good things with the intellectual conflicts that we have. But I also think that if we're not interested in processing this in a robust way, I think it's going to bring on the same destruction that a lot of us are running from.
Right. Right.
And so what's your final word?
Yeah, I think I want to believe the best about people too. Like there are people who are using this to just get to do what they want. But there's a lot of people who want to know truth, and the world has given them a process called deconstruction to help them as the path to truth, to a path to an awakening. And I think we have many coming into our churches who really want to know truth. And the reason why we're passionate and we're giving a critical analysis of deconstruction is because we believe the truth of Jesus. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And we know what he's done to us. We've seen scripture. We've wrestled with tension of scriptures. We walked through tragedy with people. We've walked through our hurt. We've been faced with deconstruction. We're very familiar with these things. And we have mercy for these things. But ultimately, we want to be truth seekers. If you're on the path of deconstruction, look for truth. If you want truth, then you'll remain open to everything because for who the Lord is, what he can do, and God will meet you. Whenever someone called upon Jesus, he revealed himself. He showed himself to them. When Moses said, "Who are you?" God didn't withhold his name from him. He told him, and then he gave him an assignment, right? And walked him through his own doubt and his own process so that God can ultimately lead his people out of the slavery of Egypt. And I just felt like there's this little verse in Jude. Judah was one of Jesus's brothers who didn't believe until the resurrection. So there's a level of skepticism this guy dealt with, and then he's addressing these believers on all these false teachings that are happening, and he's talking, just exhorting them to hold on to the faith. And so you can imagine they're here, like the audience of Jude they're hearing all these different thoughts and heretical ways and different types of living and these teachings. And Jude ultimately, towards the end, he says a lot of exhortative points, but he says, "Be merciful to those who doubt." And that doesn't mean just to allow them to live there, but it means that we are going to have doubters walk into our church. We're going to have people on this process, and you're welcome to come. We love you. We have mercy for you because we know that the world can be mad. We know that life can be difficult. We know we get to moments in life where we find ourselves in places we never thought would happen, or places we'd ever be in. So we have mercy. And this word be merciful just means to give aid to those who are living in this, trying to distinguish what they believe.
Right.
And so as pastors, as people of faith, of followers of Jesus, we have a level of mercy, or we bring aid to, we love and we care for, doors are open for you. But for those who are doubting, look to truth. Look to truth. Ask the question, what is truth?
It reminds me of Nicodemus, John chapter 3.
Yeah.
And, Nicodemus, he had to go to see Jesus at night because he didn't want everybody else to see him.
Right.
But he goes to Jesus and he wants to have a real conversation about who he is. I love The Chosen. It's the TV series.
That.
It actually shows a picture of Nicodemus and potentially rightly captures it all. I just love it. But I really think of Nicodemus as this true seeker. Like he's one of the Pharisees. He wants to know. And even though he came under the shadow of nightfall, he really was wanting to ask Jesus what this is all about. And Jesus says to him, like, for you to even see the kingdom, you must be born again. Like you have to be born again to see what I'm doing and what I'm talking about. And then he's like, naturally, I can't go back into my mother's womb. I mean, he's just like, that proposition sounds horrific.
Work. Yeah.
And Jesus talks about the Holy Spirit like wind. You neither know where it comes from or where it's going, but you know that it is. And he begins to discuss this with them, and we believe Nicodemus became a believer, but he was a true seeker. That's the power of that story to me, is he really wanted to know. And I think that's it. You know what I mean? Did he come with doubts? Did he come with challenges and thoughts and conflict? Of course he did. We're not unlike anybody. I have, in every season, I am challenged. And being in the role that I'm in does not mean it actually brings on a lot more challenges, but it also brings on the responsibility where I want to go seek the answer.
Yeah.
And I think that's what being a pastor has done for me. It's actually challenged me to get the answers because of responsibility, not because I'm afraid of what people are going to do or think. And I've let that pressure go. That's a pressure that you can have. But the reality is that I'm not trying to get anything out of anybody. I really want people to get their answers. Just like as a father, I see my kids struggle with stuff. I really want them to know God. I want them to know the truth. I want them to seek the truth. I don't want them to just do what I say to do.
Right.
I don't think there's any parent that really wants. I mean, it sounds pretty cool at first.
Right.
Like, just do what I said,
Right.
Like control seems like a legitimate option until you watch them do that, and when they go into the real world, that's not going to last.
Right.
If they only did it because you said to do it, but they don't own it themselves. As a pastor, that's what I want. I want everybody to own their own faith. I want everybody to know the truth. I want everybody to walk with it because they found that this is true in Jesus and in His Word, not just because I say so.
Right.
And so that really is the ultimate goal and encouragement from my heart. And let me ask you to do this. If you're watching on YouTube, type some stuff in the comments. I would love to hear from you about this. I recognize that it may not be everything I want to hear, but I'd love to hear from you about this, whether you're dealing with doubt, you're walking through difficulty, or whatever it might be, things you've faced and challenges that have come to you, or how you've come out of that. Type that in the comments. Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah. This probably is something we have to talk about quite a bit more. Right. But I do think it brings up things like the reliability of Scripture and other conversations, which we will have. But anyways, you're going to have to come back next Monday for another audio or video podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We had a great discussion today, conversation about deconstruction and faith deconstruction, and really how to get back on the reconstruction path.
Right.
And look forward to more of these about this topic in the future. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in.